Just hours ago, Prince William was seen in tears after Catherine made a heartbreaking announcement that has shaken their marriage and the monarchy. No one expected the future queen to speak out so boldly. But what she revealed about their family left William shattered, and the palace scrambling. The morning that changed everything. It was just after 7 a.m. when something unusual happened outside Kensington Palace. The gates opened, not for a royal event, not for a parade, but for a lone figure stepping into the grey London morning. It was Catherine. No aides, no security detail, no polished royal smile. Just the Princess of Wales, walking slowly toward the press pens. Her expression unreadable, but her eyes swollen and red. She wasn't here to perform. She wasn't here to uphold tradition. She was here, finally, to speak. Reporters, startled by the sight of her alone, fell silent. Cameras clicked, but no one dared shout a question. They sensed something was different, something heavy. Catherine walked to the microphone with steady feet and trembling hands. She didn't read from notes. She didn't clear her throat or wait for cues. She just looked up and spoke the words that would stop Britain in its tracks. "My silence was killing me more than any scandal ever could." And with that, the mask shattered. This wasn't a royal speech. It was a confession, raw and unfiltered. Her voice wavered at first, but then it settled. Soft, calm, but heartbreakingly firm. What followed wasn't about titles or tradition. It was about children. And it wasn't about duty. It was about damage. Catherine wasn't speaking to the media. She was speaking for the first time as a mother, desperate to protect her children. And as her voice echoed through the palace courtyard, the royal world would never be the same again. Because the pain she revealed next was far deeper than anyone expected. Catherine's shocking confession, a mother's hidden pain. The princess didn't hold back. What she said next turned headlines into heartbreak and brought an entire nation to tears. Prince George, she revealed, had started asking quiet questions after public events. Questions no 10-year-old should carry. "What if I don't want to be king?" he asked her one evening. She tried to answer. But how do you explain to a child that he has no choice? Princess Charlotte, with her bright energy and bold personality, was facing subtle correction behind palace doors. Her independence, once celebrated in public, was being called inappropriate by palace aides. Catherine said they called her too loud, too opinionated, words no young girl should be shamed for. And little Louis, the youngest, still trying to understand the world, had grown fearful of cameras. Catherine's voice cracked when she described how he froze whenever strangers shouted his name in public. "He doesn't understand why strangers are yelling," she said. "He thinks he's in trouble." The press saw innocence. The palace saw future monarchs. But Catherine saw children slowly losing themselves. Then came the line that changed everything. Quiet, but devastating. "They're not being raised. They're being programmed." The crowd outside was stunned. Reporters stopped taking notes. Even the palace's PR team reportedly dropped their scripts. This wasn't about rebellion. It was about survival. Catherine described how every smile was rehearsed, every outing choreographed, and how natural emotion had become unacceptable in their lives. "No crown is worth a child's peace of mind," she said. And that sentence rang through the walls of Kensington and straight into the heart of every viewer watching at home. This wasn't just a family breaking. This was a system being exposed. And as the world struggled to process her words, one person watched it all unfold from behind closed doors: Prince William. And what it awakened in him would shake the monarchy from within. The royal facade crumbles. Childhood as a royal performance. As Catherine's words continued, the truth behind palace walls began to unravel, not just for her, but for the entire royal system. She painted a picture the world had never seen. Behind every adorable balcony wave, every photo op, and every perfectly timed family appearance, there was a script. Not just suggested routines, but an exact program of how her children were expected to behave. She said it plainly. From the moment they wake up to the moment they sleep, their lives are scheduled, rehearsed, and watched. Prince George's questions weren't isolated. He had stopped playing freely in the gardens. He had grown anxious when people watched him, often pausing to ask if he was doing it right. The palace had created a world where being a child wasn't allowed unless it looked good on camera. Even family laughter, Catherine revealed, felt like a performance. At one point, she described how she once tried to lighten the mood at breakfast, playing music for the children while they danced in pajamas. Within an hour, an aide had corrected her. "That's not how royals behave in the morning." She spoke of emotional discipline disguised as tradition. When Charlotte cried after a long appearance, she was reminded to smile, to remember how the public sees her. When Louis showed frustration, it was met with silence instead of comfort. Tears weren't allowed. Hugs had to be formal. Vulnerability was seen as weakness. That line hit home for many. Viewers online said it reminded them of the very system that broke Princess Diana, a machine built not for protection, but for control. Catherine paused. Then she looked into the cameras and said, "I love this family, but I will not let it train my children into silence." For a moment, there was complete quiet in the courtyard. Not even the wind moved. This wasn't just emotional. It was revolutionary. Because no royal, not even Diana, had ever directly challenged the system as a mother and from within. But what Catherine didn't say, and didn't have to, was how this pressure had changed more than just her children. It had changed her marriage. And what she revealed next would cut even deeper. A marriage under pressure. The hidden cost on William. If Catherine's speech revealed a mother's sorrow, the next part revealed a wife's pain. Her voice softened as she described Prince William, the man the world knows as the polished, poised heir, but who, at home, was pulled in two opposite directions. He loves them, she said, but he was taught to love them from a distance. Catherine admitted something that shook even the press. The palace had instructed them to maintain emotional space from their children, to teach them independence through separation. What began as subtle guidance eventually became routine. Missed bedtimes, shortened family dinners, and public appearances that took precedence over school events and quiet moments. Duty, she said, became the enemy of connection. And the cost wasn't just emotional for the kids, it was personal for William and Catherine. The more they tried to maintain their private bond while serving the royal image, the further they drifted from each other. Catherine confessed they had cried in separate rooms, smiled on the same balcony. Behind the scenes, they were both trying to protect their family, but from different fronts. William, raised in the aftermath of tragedy, felt the burden of continuing the monarchy. He believed staying silent was part of survival. Catherine, watching her children bend under that same weight, felt silence was now the threat. We were living two truths, one for the cameras, one in the nursery. It wasn't betrayal. It was exhaustion. And though she never said the word separation, her tone hinted at a deep divide. Not from lack of love, but from being trapped in a system that punishes truth and rewards performance. It was a system that nearly tore them apart. And while Catherine had finally broken her silence, William was about to break too, but not in front of the cameras, in the quiet of his private study, with the door closed and the weight of generations on his shoulders. Diana's echo. The past repeats itself. As Catherine's trembling voice echoed across the courtyard, one name hung in the air without ever being spoken. Princess Diana. She didn't have to say it. The resemblance was unmistakable. The same courage, the same heartbreak, the same defiance against a system that demanded perfection over peace. Every word Catherine spoke seemed to reopen wounds the monarchy never healed. For many watching at home, it felt like 1997 all over again. The same institution, the same silence, the same woman fighting for her children's right to simply live without fear. She described emotional isolation that mirrored what Diana endured decades earlier. "I've been told to smile through discomfort, to remain composed when I wanted to cry," Catherine said softly. But silence doesn't protect. It destroys. Those who remembered Diana's interviews felt history folding in on itself. The public saw a pattern: strong, compassionate women breaking under royal pressure, while the palace stayed quiet behind closed curtains. Even within royal circles, whispers began, "It's happening again." Senior aides scrambled to manage the narrative, but it was too late. The press, once wary of criticizing the crown, turned reflective. Headlines read, "Diana's legacy lives through Kate." And the palace had faced controversy before, but this was different. This wasn't rebellion. This was revelation. And the heir to the throne, Prince William, was now standing where his mother once stood, torn between the woman he loved and the duty he was born into. By the time Catherine's broadcast ended, the damage, or perhaps the truth, was irreversible. And somewhere deep inside the palace, William watched in silence, realizing that the same forces that once destroyed his mother were now threatening his wife. But unlike Diana, Catherine wasn't alone. And soon, neither would he be. William breaks down, the moment that shattered him. When the cameras stopped rolling, another storm began. This time inside Kensington Palace. In his private study, Prince William sat before the television, replaying Catherine's words over and over. Each sentence cut deeper, not in anger, but in recognition. Her voice carried the echoes of his mother's, trembling, emotional, but strong, and he couldn't stop hearing one line. "They're not being raised. They're being programmed." For the first time in years, William felt everything he'd tried to bury. Grief, guilt, fear, memories of Diana, of flashing cameras and cold palace halls, rushed back like a wave. He understood exactly what Catherine meant, because he'd lived it once before. Advisors began calling within minutes. They told him to issue a statement, something controlled, something to steady the crown. But every suggested word felt like betrayal. How could he silence the woman who just spoke the truth he'd spent his life avoiding? Left alone, he turned off the lights and sat in the dark. The future king, the man trained to never show weakness, finally broke. Tears came first quietly, then uncontrollably. He wasn't crying for the crown. He was crying for the cycle, for Diana, for Catherine, for George, Charlotte, and Louis, for everything love had cost them inside those gilded walls. Later that night, a close aide entered quietly to check on him. William didn't look up. He simply whispered, "It's happening again, and I won't let it." It was the moment that changed everything. Because for the first time in royal history, the heir to the throne was ready to stand against the throne itself. And soon, the king would find out just how far his son was willing to go. King Charles reacts. Silence the princess. Within hours of Catherine's earth-shattering speech, Buckingham Palace descended into full lockdown. No more smiles, no more ceremony, only crisis. Inside the Crimson Chamber, where monarchs had once declared war and rewritten royal law, King Charles sat with his most trusted senior advisors. His face was pale, unreadable, but his voice, ice cold. "She will not speak again," he ordered. "Not in public. Not to the press. Not ever." To Charles, this wasn't a domestic issue. It was a code-red breach of royal control. A senior royal, the future queen, had just gone rogue. Not with scandal, but with truth. And truth, unfiltered and televised, was far more dangerous than gossip. Queen Camilla was furious and didn't try to hide it. Behind closed doors, she let her anger loose, her voice sharp, cutting. "She's playing Diana's game," she snapped, "and she knows exactly what she's doing." Camilla had lived through that storm once. She wasn't going to let history repeat, not under her watch. By sunset, a containment plan was already in motion. Royal aides drafted strategies to limit Catherine's public appearances. Quiet calls were made to palace-friendly media outlets. Whispers of emotional strain, fragility, and private concern started appearing in the press. The same gaslighting tactics once used to discredit Princess Diana were being dusted off and deployed again. This time, on Catherine. Articles began surfacing within 24 hours. Anonymous sources claiming, "The princess is under pressure. William is concerned for her well-being, and there are worries about her judgment." But there was one critical miscalculation this time. The world had changed. People remembered Diana. They remembered how she had been silenced, sidelined, and smeared. And now they were watching Catherine and seeing the same playbook unfold. But this time, they didn't buy it. Public support surged. Social media exploded in solidarity. Editorials praised Catherine's honesty, courage, and motherhood, not her silence. And perhaps most importantly, Prince William refused to follow protocol. He didn't release a counter-statement. He didn't distance himself. He didn't play neutral. He stood with her. And for the first time, the monarchy wasn't fighting outsiders. It was facing a crisis from within, fueled not by scandal, but by truth, love, and a mother's cry to protect her children. And this time, it wasn't just the public the crown had to answer to, it was its own future king. The face-off, William versus the crown. It happened behind the same heavy oak doors where generations of royal crises had been handled. Wars, abdications, betrayals, scandal. But this time, it wasn't the king at the center. It was his son. Prince William, the heir, the symbol of royal continuity, walked into King Charles's private study at Buckingham Palace with one thing: resolve. His jaw was set. His voice was calm. But the emotion in his eyes said everything. "She did it because she had to," William said firmly. "She was protecting our children." There was no stammer, no apology, just truth. spoken plainly. King Charles remained still, eyes fixed, his face unreadable. He reminded William, slowly, coldly, that their duty was to the crown, not to themselves. That emotional rebellion, no matter how justified, could destroy public faith in the monarchy. That the crown doesn't bend, even when hearts break. Charles listed headlines: political fallout, royal tradition. But William didn't flinch. Then Camilla spoke, stepping in, hoping to ease the blow. She called Catherine's actions dangerous, impulsive, and unbecoming of a future queen. And that's when William turned to her, and everything changed. "If you silence her," he said without blinking, "you lose me too." There was no shouting, no fist slammed on tables, no royal rage, just a single thunderous sentence that split the room like lightning. The future King of England, once molded by royal image, raised under duty, trained to never step out of line, had just drawn his own line. For Catherine, for his children, for truth. The silence in that room was deafening. Even seasoned advisors, those used to handling outbursts, scandals, and rogue royals, said nothing. Because this wasn't just a disagreement, it was a declaration. William walked out of the room, head high, spine straight, no turning back. He wasn't just the heir anymore. He was a man choosing love over loyalty, family over formality, truth over tradition. And behind him, in that quiet, echoing study, one terrifying question remained. What happens when the heir warriors stops playing by royal rules? Because in that moment, the crown didn't lose just a protocol. It lost control. The Catherine effect. The world takes her side. The palace may have tried to control the headlines. They may have drafted statements, made phone calls, and tightened press access. But by the time their damage control machine kicked in, the world had already chosen its queen. Within hours, the impact of Catherine's emotional revelation had crossed oceans. From London to Los Angeles, from Delhi to Dublin, one phrase echoed louder than any royal decree. We stand with Catherine. Outside Kensington Palace, candles flickered beneath the iron gates. Children left crayon drawings of hearts and stick figures labeled George, Charlotte, Louis. Mothers knelt with tears in their eyes. Fathers held their children close. Headlines didn't mince words. The most human moment in royal history, the Sydney Herald. A princess no more, just a mother who spoke. New York Times. The crown has a conscience, and her name is Catherine. The Guardian. Parents saw themselves in her heartbreak. Teachers spoke of empathy in power. Mental health advocates praised her vulnerability as leadership. And children's rights groups released joint statements urging the monarchy to modernize its treatment of young heirs, to finally see them as children first, not symbols. Even former palace aides, some long retired, broke silence anonymously. She said what many inside have felt for years, one revealed. We were told to smile and say nothing, but Catherine didn't. Meanwhile, Buckingham Palace remained frozen. No official response, no public gesture, just the sound of silence and the overwhelming sound of support building beyond the gates. Catherine didn't wear a crown in that moment. She didn't need one. No glittering jewels, no polished rehearsals, just a voice, a truth, and a fierce love for her children that could not and would not be silenced. Supporters didn't march to destroy the monarchy. They gathered to protect the woman who dared to challenge it from within. And for the first time in decades, the institution looked small, rigid, outdated. And one woman's voice? Louder than the crown, clearer than protocol, stronger than silence. This was no longer just about Catherine. It was about every woman who'd been told to shrink herself, every parent who was expected to perform, and every soul who had once whispered, "Enough." The world heard her, and they didn't just stand with her, they rose behind her. The final decision. Catherine pulls the children from royal duty. Days after her explosive confession, Catherine, Princess of Wales, returned to the very place it all began, the gates of Kensington Palace. The sky was heavy with grey clouds, but her presence radiated clarity and control. She wore no royal sash, no tiara, just a soft navy coat and unshakable purpose. With cameras flashing and the world holding its breath, Catherine stepped forward again. Only this time, her hands didn't tremble. Her voice didn't break. She had made her choice, and she was ready to stand by it, no matter the cost. "My children will no longer perform," she declared. "Their childhood is not a royal duty. It's their right." With those 15 words, she did the unthinkable. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis were formally withdrawn from public royal duties. No more staged appearances, no more photo ops, no more pressure to be perfect heirs before they even understood the weight of it. It was a quiet revolution, not against the crown, but for her children's peace. Behind her stood Prince William, not in uniform, not in royal posture, just a husband, and more importantly, a father. Silent, firm, unwavering, no aides, no protocol, just family. This wasn't a performance, it was a boundary. Inside Buckingham Palace, silence fell like snow. There was no prepared response, no press release, no rebuttal. The monarchy had no script for this kind of defiance, because it wasn't scandalous, it wasn't treasonous, it was simply human. And the public felt it. Church bells rang across Westminster, balconies erupted in applause. Even critics praised the courage it took to prioritize children over legacy. For the first time in generations, a royal mother had chosen freedom over formality, love over lineage. And in doing so, she didn't just protect her children. She rewrote what it means to be royal. One decision, 3 lives reclaimed, and a crown forced to evolve, not through command, but through compassion. The story of this monarchy won't be remembered for titles or traditions. It will be remembered for a mother who stepped forward and refused to let her children live in a golden cage. In choosing truth over tradition, Catherine shattered silence, and William stood by her, not as a prince, but as a husband and father. Their marriage may never be the same, but their message is louder than ever. Love must come before the crown. And now the world is listening.